20th and Jackson. That empty building right across from Francis, where the last place I ever called home was. 4 years we watched the whole village grow up. CD, Erie, ET, hip-hop community organizing on a block. What? Late nights, dirty dishes and injera runs, candlelit dinners after gates are locked up. That's why I jokingly call this an Amish mafia. We smell like onions and we eat with our hands. It's the first place to embrace all that I am, under one roof fully, and it always pulled me back to the kitchen when life was too much. If it wasn't for Rahwa, I don't even know what I'd be doing, or if I'd eaten, slept, taught, organize another show, rock, love, work, manifest in the building, filled with everything that life comes with. No exaggeration, cause for celebration. We know shit'll never be the same again. Even when our building's gone, we gon' keep building. Even when our building's gone, we gon' keep building. Even when our building's gone, we gon' keep building on a legacy that is strong.
Rahwa Ogbe Keshi Habte, Seattle community organizer, dies at 42, reads an article on KUOW NPR, published online on August 31st, 2020. The news echoed throughout Seattle community and beyond. We have not met Rahwa in person, so when we learned about her passing, we began searching for her stories. We did so as we planned to make this video to celebrate the life that she lived. We watched some videos and read articles about her multifaceted work. Several news outlets, including the Seattle Times, KUOW NPR, and The Stranger, covered the passing of the award-winning community leader. The death of Rahwa is a blow to Seattle culture, wrote The Stranger at a local newspaper. Other community members, organizers, activists, artists, organizations, and prominent politicians, including Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, wrote about her on various blog sites on social media. Everyone agrees that Rahwa was a rare gem. Some people describe Rahwa as a powerhouse, a titan, an alchemist, and someone even called her a Shuri, the princess character in Black Panther, the sister of T'Challa, noting that actor Chadwick Boseman and Rahwa died on the same day, August 28, 2020. Rahwa won the 2010 Red Winged Leadership Grand Prize for her work with Hitmo, an award given by Seattle University to innovators who bring together leadership, business, and social responsibility. Hitmo means home and was the name of an Eritrean restaurant Rahwa and her sisters owned in the Central District. Hitmo was not just a restaurant, but also a hub for art, culture, organizing, and activism. For more, 3 community members have joined us in Mahdi to share their thoughts about Rahwa's life and her impact as she touched their lives personally and through her work. We all know Rahwa was involved with and known to many different communities outside the Eritrean community in Seattle. So in no way we want to limit her work, her wide circle of impact when we talk about personal reflections during this session. May she rest empowered. Our guests today are Mehret Takhle, Simon Andu, and Adiam Aube. How you heard about her passing and where were you and how you felt at the time, along with the impact that she had on you as well.
Yeah, so it was like a strange day actually, because I remember in the morning I was driving to work in downtown that morning. It was a Friday, I believe. And in the morning in downtown Seattle, as I was going to, I'm a director at the Orion Center, so I serve youth, homeless youth. And so on my way to work, I look and I'll see a woman who looked just like Rahwa. And so I kind of almost broke my neck because downtown is empty. And I was like, is that Rahwita? And so I kind of paused and looked. I was like, oh, because y'all know how Rahwa has her own hairstyle with, And so she looked just like her. And I was like, oh man. And I was just thinking about her. And so I drive, it was like a busy day at work. So I get home around 5:30, and it was like a August day. So it was warm. I'm excited. I get home, exhausted. So I sit on the couch and I think I was drinking tea or something. And I was just talking to my wife, Ariam. And then my sister Eden FaceTimed me. And I'm like, oh, it's strange, you know? And so I pick up the phone and, you know, I'm bubbly. It's like Friday afternoon. And, you know, Ed and my sister Ed and I, we usually joke around. And so I look at her face. When I see her face, I knew somebody died. Because Eden, like, not a lot of things phase my sister. And so when she has a certain look, and Eden was really, really close to Rahwa, like really, really close from the Hitmo days. And, you know, they were extremely close and they always talked. And throughout her battle with addiction, there was a few people beside Rahwa, and my sister Eden was one of them, you know? And so when I see her, I had all these names in my head. I knew somebody died then, and I just looked, I was like, what's going on? And I was like, you know, who is it? You know? And when she said, and Rahwa was not one of those names. So I was kind of just shocked. And to be honest, until now, it's been like a weird year. And, you know, like Hazan is different. Like our Hazans and how we process grief is different. So she told me, and I was like, what? And I asked her what happened. And we didn't have a lot of news. All she told me is that, you know, she passed. So closed the phone, and I just sat there for like maybe a good 15 minutes. I was like buzzed, you know. I just remember just, you know, trying to figure out what the next move is. So I called my brother, and I just hear my mom in the background going off. And he told me he confirmed it. And so I just changed, and we were concerned about just COVID and everything. And so it's crazy because I was like, okay, you know, so what, you know, where's everybody at and what's happening? And so I just go to Safeway and got a bunch of hand sanitizers, as much stuff, because I knew that people were going to come at least the first 2 days, you know? And so it was just like, okay, you know, I got into like go mode because I knew that, okay, like I wanted the family to grieve, like Tommy, like the brothers and sisters, because most often in hazans and weddings, you have people who are, you know, like grieving and people who are working. And so even though like that's my older sister, I wanted them to not worry about COVID and just to really like process this, you know? And so we went, and I was just there, and, you know, like got to the house, all my cousins were there, and, you know, just hugged Tommy and just hugged the brothers and sisters. And we were there all evening. And the next morning, like, so we were just, I mean, you know, throughout the whole Hazan until today, like, it's so surreal to me because I think it hit me. And even for a lot of us, you know, when on the day of burial, when we saw her and you know, it was heavy. And that's when it kind of clicked. But even then, because we're not grieving together, and you don't, you know, like during COVID, like, and a lot of people don't realize too, like with her internal battle, we didn't see her for a long time. So everybody was isolated in pockets, and then everybody gets together, and then everybody's isolated again. And so a part of me, like, I think a lot of us haven't really like grasped the fact that she has transitioned, you know, and that she is in a new journey now. So that was like how I received it. Until today, I'm processing it. Like it hasn't like, you know, like there are moments when I just pause and think. And it's interesting because I know I don't think Adiam got to I'm sure she heard about my cousin Daniel, who's Rahwa's first cousin. So Baba Ogbe and Baba Sahle are brothers, and Daniel is Baba Sahle's son, and Rahwa, the daughter of Baba Ogbe. So my cousin Daniel died in 2003, and Rahwa was actually at his bedside. It was Rahwa reading him the Bible, and he died when she was with him alone. And I was outside with Temesga and my brother Aaron on that day, and he also wasn't well. So upon burial, you know, we were trying to find her the perfect spot, and we found her one right next to Danu, you know. And so, in a way, you know, it was nice to see that, you know, we found her a spot next to our brother. But, you know, it was sad, especially to see the elders, Baba Ogbe, who was extremely strong, and Mama Topia, who've seen so much. I mean, like the parents and our elders, we've been through so much, and this year has been like a rough year, with a lot of blessings too, you know. And so just to see that, yeah, it's been tough.
I woke up randomly at like 3-4 in the morning, and I remember seeing this text, and I thought it was like a nightmare, like a very surreal, like, because my internet was so spotty, I didn't know if it was delayed or I didn't know if I was like having a dream. It was just one of those things that I'm like, okay, this is a nightmare. Like, I don't think, like, why is this happening? You know? And I was like, I don't believe this. And I waited for like a respectful, like, morning time to call. And I was having text messages with her siblings. And so, in a non-COVID time, I would have just drove back to Seattle. Like, that's like the initial, like, and then like, what's happening? What do you know, like, you just want to do like everything. And then it was just kind of one of these, like, we don't know. There was a lot of like downtime, of like everybody's processing what is happening, right? Like like her family, us outside waiting for, you know, it was just one of those moments in my life that I was like, this is impossible. Like, this is not it. Like, I'm going to wake up and like, I don't know why I would even have this nightmare. It's one of those, like, I can't believe it's like this is the end, you know? Especially because we didn't get that last time to see each other. We didn't have like a social setting. Like, I didn't get to see her at a spot, especially being so far. I was just like, we couldn't grieve together, right? Like, as a family or as like a community, like, we didn't even have one of those moments to really just come together. Rahwa was one of those people, like, when you're hanging out with her, like 100 people are going to stop by to say hi, right? Like, you're going to run into her in the city, in the CD, in the cafe, at Washington Hall. So, you know, I just expected like we were going to run into each other. Rahwa acted with integrity. Like, she was a real honest person. And to be honest, in this work, especially like political and organizing, that is hard to come by. You know, there's a lot of negativity that comes with it. There's a lot of fighting and tears for fighting for the voiceless that comes. And she was just one of those people that kept it real. When I hear 90s music, I think about her, because I think about like all the karaoke nights, right? Like karaoke's at Busch Garden, karaoke at Hitmo, karaoke in their apartment at Wazoo, like when we would come out for Mom's Weekend. I was like in high school. You know, they've taken us under their wings. Like, I just think about like just like Maxwell, just with her sisters, like that bond over music. And then also Disney movies, right? Like, just, they had like a collection of like, I think they were the only Habesha people that bought like Disney musicals, like not the actual movie, but like a collection of musicals that were Disney. And so campfires, like I just remember the days of camping at this gentleman named Jay. That's a friend of their family, friend of Eunice's. And I feel like you guys might have been new when we first went camping. Do you remember those days of camping? And we would just sing around like just a bunch of Africans from, you know, singing like Disney tunes at this like white man's house in the middle of nowhere with some more than whatnot. And so like, that's a positive influence on our life, because oftentimes you hear kids saying like, Africans don't go camping, we don't sing, and they were the ones that introduced us to that, right? Like, not only introduced us, they made it cool to participate in those activities together. Like, we went hiking afterwards to Rattlesnake Ledge. And so like, that's the thing that also Rahwa did. She introduced you to new things and didn't make you feel like you wouldn't question her about it. Like, when I hear people say like what she's had them try, I'm like, yeah, I definitely was on the couscous, like didn't really know about it until her, or she'll like have these new recipes for things. You could also ask her Asmeta to cook something, they know how to do it. So it was just like a jack of all trades. Like, it was just like, yeah, it was just, she is an incredible person. And I think that like positive lasting impression will go on. I think for me, I just kind of expected, like a 180 of positivity, like she would write about this when she got to a place of safe and positivity with her health. And I mean, you know, I'm selfish in saying I didn't get closure, right? And I don't think any of us did, but I think that in spiritually, we did get closure. Like, we got what we needed from her, and we have what we need to keep things moving. And I think one of the things is being a positive stewardess, you know, walking with integrity, remembering what she was about and how she made sure like she's just positive vibes was her, right? So also modeling that behavior, because she showed that to me. And so when people know, like an Eritrean or somebody in the world that she did, like, you can't mess up what she's created. you have to also make sure her legacy is continuing. So when people know, like, oh, you're a Richard, oh, you know her, oh, you know, you're connected in this way, you have to make sure that that legacy is continuing in the way that Rahwa would want it to be.
But as far as Rahwita's impact on my life, it's not just Rahwa, you know, like the whole Ogbe family, and even from Yemen. Like when I grew up in Yemen, my father, just our household was always like, we called it like a community center where people who were sick and whatever. So like we grew up serving the community in Yemen. So we came here in Yemen. We grew up. It was just me, my brother, my sister, my dad, and mom. We're really isolated, but at the same time, Pops was in a way like a community leader and a pharmacist and a doctor in a way, where our household was just IVs everywhere. And, you know, if people are fighting or if people are trying to get married, it was our household, you know? And so when we came here to see Baba Ogbe, who's my dad's first cousin, and I just got to see all these big personalities, Sanai, Rahwa, Asmeret, all of them were like, you know, so I was like, wow, it was beautiful to see. And I remember our first years just trying to get acclimated to the States, and Rahwa would drive us everywhere. She wasn't the type of person, and I know Mehret and Adiam talked about this, she wasn't the type of person who would say, look, this is what I'm doing. But she did it. And to me, and I said this too, you know, and I realized that when she passed away too, which was a crazy part. She didn't have to say, you know, follow me or do as I like. Her actions was a school of thought for a lot of us. It really was, you know, because there was nothing that she didn't do. Whether it was just organizing in a small, like at summer schools, for example, and she'll start it at what is that called, Washington Hall in the summers, or Hitmo. And Hitmo wasn't just a restaurant, as most of you know, we call it a community center that really shaped. I see a lot of like Nikita Oliver, a lot of these like young leaders today in Seattle started at Hitmo, believe it or not. A lot of like influencers like Hollis, the Blue Scholars, you name them, like Macklemore, all of these people crossed paths with Rahwa, and she had a big impact on people like that, you know? And so growing up, seeing that like that, she was, whether it's organizing or whether it was in the community, like the Eritrean community, I know she was trying to start a lot of programmings early 2000s. She was a ferocious leader, you know, like she introduced me to The Alchemist, for example. I just knew that she loved to read. She was bright, like campaigning. I remember even like when she got into the city council, like she would just walk a path and we'll just follow, and we were there. She wasn't like everybody else. She made her own way, and I think a lot of close family members didn't know what she did until she passed. Until today, like a lot of these things are like that people were shocked. They're like, "Was that her?" We're like, "Yeah, this is who Rahwa was," but she didn't speak about it. But that was just one element of who she was. And most often, always, you know, I think the people who serve the most and who feel the pain of others are those who suffer the most internally, and that's why they are able to understand, you know, like the suffering of others, right, through empathy. And that's who she was. So even though she was this like brilliant leader and just brilliant mind, and I really believe if Rahwa didn't invest her time in the community, whatever, she would have been a doctor, or her brain and her gift and her ability to process information, and it was unlike anything I really saw. And everybody in the family would say she was brilliant since she was a baby. She really was. You know, she was really special in that way. And anything she applied herself to, she got it done. And that's why, you know, what impressed me the most or impacted me the most as a person, I think, was in her battle with addiction. She wasn't afraid to share her story and to lead with that and to talk about it, you know. Well, a lot of people are usually fighting silent battles. I think we all have our own addictions, but can you imagine the courage that you need to share with people and to talk about it, and every time you fall? And like Mehret and Adiam said, not once did I think that she wasn't going to beat this. And if anybody could beat it, I think it was Rahwa. But you know, at the end of the day, God has his say, and
Adiam or Mehret, if you have anything around like her impact on you, your reflection since then.
Yeah, you know, I want to just backpack on what Simone said as far as, Rahwa was like wicked smart. Like when you think of the areas that she could master, like her artistic creativity, her, like, I'm gonna call her political strategist. her innovation towards change at an early on. You know, there's a lot of the behind the scenes that she impacted. Like, for example, our Independence Day proclamation, that was Rahwa. And that was Rahwa thinking about the kids in dance group. So every year when the city of Seattle fulfills that proclamation, that is Rahwa. That is neither the community centers. They take the what she's done, the paper, and brand that, but she did the behind the scenes to share and show that we exist as a people, as a dance group, as a youth. And that was her drive. I mean, she was our biggest supporter when it came to dance group. We have no space to practice. We practice at Hitmo restaurant. You know, we also worked at Hitmo restaurant, right? We also had a creativity fueling because of what we were able to admire and witness while being at Hitmo, right? And so, I mean, we were maybe like 60 plus kids at that time, from elementary to college, right? Like having 2 community centers and no place to practice, and using a small restaurants, whether it was after hours or weekends, and after hours meaning like before it opened or after it closed, to practice. That was her. Like, she bought a place for people to be able to coexist, like a co-working spaces. Now you see spaces like WeWork and all these things that people pay for, but she thought about that a long time ago before it was something that was popular, right? Like, that was an innovation she had in property, right? And so there are a lot of things like that that we can give examples that we didn't get to give her flowers of saying that it happened because of you. And I think there's other people who have taken credits for things that she pursued and made happen. I mean, I'll even say when we were fighting on behalf of like the Harborview janitors, when they were being treated misfairly, she was at the mayor's office and I was like, hey, can you help me? Like, I'm doing this on behalf of my dad and my uncle and all this stuff, but can you help me? Because I'm also emotionally invested, that I need you to be like my sounding board and help strategize with me. She dropped what she did. I went and picked her up from City Hall and she helped with my, like, the focus groups and all that. She didn't have to do that. I mean, that's somebody in a very high position at the mayor's office that was able to like drop what she did to help me in that moment, because she knew she wanted to fight for the working class, for the, you know, the janitors, the parking attendants, and whatnot. And we were able to win, and she was there the whole way. And you know, those are things like behind the scenes. Like, if you don't have someone you can trust and say, hey, I have this issue at work, what are our rights at work? And like someone like Rahwa's like, have you tried this? Have you contacted this? Da, da, da. Like, most of the time we don't even say when we have issues at work. Like, our parents almost have taught us that, like, you have to deal with it and keep going and live for another day, right? And it's like, she reminds you that you have rights as a person every day. And there's, and I always say there's never, now I also say there's always an exception to the rule. And I felt like that was Rahwa. Like, let's see what other avenues we can take. Let me call up my friend. I think I might, like, she'll never say no, and she'll never say, I think it's impossible. It's more like, let's strategize on how we can make this happen. And that takes an incredible human being to be able to master those different sectors to make that happen. It's not an easy task. And I know she's, you know, spent her down days reading books for days. Like Simone said, she can recommend you a book. And you're just like, how do you have time to do this? She was a nurturer. She took care of people. You may not see her at a guayla, you may not see her but she's taking care of somebody at home, taking care of the sick, making sure the people that need to be fed are fed. So, I mean, there was a lot of behind the scenes that people didn't know about her, but when you got to know her, you're just like, how are you making magic happen?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things I can think about to add that, and obviously my husband and someone know her so much more. But what I think about is even just this like little impact. Like, I'm this random person who showed up in the state of Washington and knew nobody. And even though I met, you know, Temescan first and you know, Rahwa, like when I met her, there was just this, like, she was instantly like, well, why would you ever question you couldn't come here? Why would you ever question you couldn't do anything? Like, you have any question, like, just ask it. And not just her, like every person at Hitmo. Like, I remember Jonathan, like, he was the bartender. She had like no concern for even if he wanted to or not. She's like, if she ever comes here, give her the Wi-Fi, let her sit down. Like, hey, like, I mean, and he, even at the memorial, he saw me, he's like, I remember you, because I would come literally every day. And there was just like you didn't feel like no condemnation, no judgment, like nothing. Like, you could say and do whatever. And I would even just like Marta said, like I would just run things by her. Like I just started working at UW. I don't understand the political scene in Seattle. I don't understand how to community organize here. The Eritrean community, even like I don't know how to get involved, right? Like here's things I'm interested in. I like really want to support youth. What does that look like? How do I do that here? She just would answer, and she was like working. I mean, it's not like she's sitting with me hanging out. She's like running through the whole space doing something. And she'd be like, oh, you should check out this business. You should check out this company. Like, check out this. Let me introduce you to my cousin. And then she'd be like, okay, I'll be back. And then she would just go and then like bring me Shahi. And then she'd be like, oh, did you like look up that thing? And she would remember, like, you always felt remembered. That was the thing I think I just always with Rahwa, like you always felt remembered. You always felt like you mattered. And for me to be this random person that literally met her one day and she's having a show, and then every time I came back, she remembered me. Like, and even if I didn't, I very rarely came back again with anybody in the family. She always just like welcomed me in and made me feel like I mattered. But then what I also think is interesting is like her, like she cared about so many causes. And so I remember like, you know, there was an earthquake in Haiti in 2010 when I got there, and she did a fundraiser, and there was this fundraiser, and I came, and there was like a rap battle, there was like an open mic going on, there were donations at the door. It was like the most diverse way to raise money it was like all day long, all week long. Anybody wanted to host anything for the Haiti earthquake, just go to Hitmo and Rahwa would let you do it. There was like no question. It was out of like, yeah, like you could give money at the door, you could buy something inside, there were people selling stuff, and then there was a lot. So she was so creative, and I think thinking about like how do we support and take care of each other. But the other thing that I thought was really beautiful is like it was also about empowering people. And so she always did like write these I remember there was like these women only kind of like open mics and poetry slam kind of things. And I love poetry slams. And I remember I was like, where else can I see poetry slams in Seattle? And Rahwa hooked me up at this place downtown, and it was on Tuesday night at like 9 o'clock. Who does poetry at Tuesday night? But she was like, go there, it's amazing. And I would go all the time. And but every time she had an event, I would go too. But she did these events, and it was like these women of color, Black women events who were the whole, anybody who entered had to be a woman. And it was like, we're going to empower women. Like, this is what we're going to do to showcase like that we are smart, we're talented, and we have, an ability to kind of take our creative ways to think about how do we not just speak beautiful words, but I think they were all really activist women. So it was also about like moving the agenda in some way. And so it was like, I think like Meta said, like her brain just worked in so many ways when she thought about doing something. And so it was like, yep, I'm going to empower these people. I'm going to help out at, dance group. We were in, I remember dance group when I volunteered was in the Moja Parade. And she totally had like she came and participated, and she was like walking with the kids and carrying her nieces and nephews and like helping support and like bringing water and feeding everybody. So her, not just her nurturingness, but I think, yeah, like her creative ways to empower people. And like I said, just this random girl from Arizona just showed up and didn't know very many people. And Rahwa was like, no, this is your house. Like, come here. And I think I just always felt like, not only did I appreciate that, but there was just so much inspiration in Rahwa. Like, I was like, I want to be like her. And I didn't even know, like I met her one time and I'm like, I want to be like her. I don't know what that means, but I need to figure out how to be like her. And every time I continue to interact with her, I constantly felt that feeling. You just feel loved and appreciated, but you also like, you're like aiming for that. You're like, I got to figure out how to get to be like her in some way. And I just, and like someone said, she never said it. It wasn't like she'd be like, hey, I'm going to go do this thing. She would just go do something. And you're like, no one thought about how that was a problem in this city and we should fix it. And you're like, I want to be like Rahwa. So I very much appreciated that about her too.
She 100% was a gate opener. There's not a lot of people who are gate openers, but she would be the model of what a gate opener is in our community.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, everybody who shared so far. I do like it. What I'm kept hearing these different things. The word that keeps coming to me is a superwoman. She's like a superhuman, superwoman. She was a role model, a resource, like a think partner. You can keep probably adding adjectives to this. And you're like, my heart aches to hear that she's not here, right? And at the same time, it also, that the fact that we're having this conversation, the fact that we are capturing the things that she did, the impact that she had on you all and other people around, I think is really crucial because now young people, including us, we're still young, we're looking at that as like a way to be, right? A possibility. We could be that to our community, to each other. And if we do, just imagine what the possibilities are. For us as a Eritrean community and also just a larger Black and brown communities here in Washington State as well.
What's the one thing that you would always remember of Rahwa, and what her legacy would be?
That's a two-part. So the one thing I always remember her is that she was a gentle giant. She was actually very silly. Like, I tell a lot of like goofy jokes, riddles. And I just remember a time where like it would be her and Timmy that would do like really silly jokes and or act out like a scene from a movie. And I just be like, you know, like I love that because that shows like the realness of people. Like when you don't care, like when I'll tell jokes to people like, you're so corny, da da da. But when you're in a place where other people have corny jokes too, like it's always funny. Something about her legacy is that she was a very kind person, that I strive to be, because sometimes I can be pretty, I'm an extrovert, so I can also be pretty stern. And so sometimes you have to take a moment and laugh, right? Like, and assess the situation and reflect and move on. And that's what she was, right? Like she was a serious person, but she didn't take things too seriously, right? Like it didn't impact her. She didn't inherit the negativity. She just always stayed positive. And I think that is something I strive to be. That is a very unique character that someone can have. And it's great when you see it modeled, because when it's modeled, you also see her successes and you also see some blind spots, but you also know that like, it's okay to have flaws. Like, you know what I mean? Like you can't be strong all the time. You know, like we're human. And she showed that and she shared that. And I think one of my biggest regrets is when I would talk to her during her addiction, she would leave me speechless, which is really hard. When she would say, I'm not doing well. And I would say, like, I didn't know how to say it's okay, because sometimes when I'm in my feelings, like, it's not going to be okay. And you just have to be real with what you're battling. And so, like, I also didn't want to lie to her, but it's like, how do you, like, I didn't have the tools to respond to her answers. When I would ask, how are you doing? What can I help you with? And the fact that someone that had many resources, like when you can't provide for them, I feel bad that I didn't have that opportunity to help her or have a response that maybe it was positive, but I didn't feel like I did enough, right? Like during that time, I didn't provide enough, or I didn't go. I think if the roles were reversed, I could see her going like the extra mile to help me and support me. And so that is one of my things that I'm like, did we do enough? Were we able to provide enough? But I think part of her legacy is being honest with each other and saying, I'm not okay today, right? Like when a friend of mine is asking how you're doing, I said, I'm not okay today, knowing that that's a safe place for me to say why I'm not okay, and knowing that she can help me. And I think that for a while, our parents didn't actually teach us that. They taught us to hide and to live in the dark and to fester those addictions and those feelings. And that's not we inherited a lot of our trauma. And so I think one thing she shared with her transparency is it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to have dark days. It's okay to rely on your community to support you. And it's okay to say, I'm not okay. Yeah.
My response is similar to Mahret's. When I think about Rahwa, I think about just like she's unapologetically herself, and she's not going to let other people influence how she navigates the world in that way. And what I appreciate, similar to what Mahret was saying, is I think the reason people are so drawn to her, happy people, upset people, broken people, I mean, right, all people, but I think a lot of broken people were attracted to her because she wore her honest, true self all the time. And they felt like I could be true and honest, right? So I think similar to what Mahret's saying is we are so conditioned as our culture to hide all of that and to not talk about the bad stuff, especially if the bad stuff would give you a bad reputation, right? Like it's different if it's bad, like you're like, oh, I don't feel good today. You could kind of cover that up in however you want to cover that up. But to really truly be like, I'm suffering, right? Like I'm going through a hard time. Rahwa never shied away from that conversation. And I think whether it was her addiction, when things weren't going well, when the city is like not taking care of immigrant communities, like whatever was happening, she was unapologetically herself and true to herself. And I think the other thing I was going to say is when I talked about her being really silly, I have so many silly pictures of Rahwa. And like I said, I'm not even that close to Rahwa. Like her smile, like she was like, her tongue is sticking out, she's making funny faces, playing with the kids at a wedding, at a serious event, because she was like, we got to be happy. Like we got to live life and you got to be true to who you are. And that's who she was. Right. And then on top of that, like I think she never wanted other people to feel like they could not be that true self. If you're silly and goofy and you want to like stick your tongue out and be silly, like you should be allowed to do that and not feel like, what's my mom going to say? What are all the other aunties and uncles here going to say? What's the community going to say? And not feel really entrapped kind of by like societal norms. And I think that's so much good, like mental health and healing and resilience that she had is like that, I think helped fuel her to continue the fight. Right. And like someone said, then the heavier your heart is for those people, the heavier your heart is going to be in the pain that you feel. But I think what's so beautiful about her is like you could never question Rahwa being truthful. Like no matter what it was about, it was always in her like beautiful truth. And I think that a lot of people forget that. We try to be what we think other people want us to be. We try to be what the world wants us to be, what our family wants us to be, right? We walk down the path, we take the career choice, we major in whatever in school. All of it is because we're influenced by people. And I think even if Rahwa slightly was, she would correct herself, right? And she would realize like, that's not okay. We don't got to do that, and tell people that too. And I just have this great memory too of going to karaoke for her birthday. When I first met her, I didn't even know her very well. And she's like, no, come. I just happened to be at Hitmo. She's like, let's go. And I was like, okay, I don't really like karaoke because I can't sing and I don't have a voice. So then I'm like, I'll just be quiet. And Eden was there actually, and Temeskin was there. And then everybody's singing. I was like, it's my birthday. Like everybody's singing. And everybody's like, yeah, you have to sing, Adiam. I'm like, listen, I am tone deaf. If I get on this microphone, you people are going to be really upset. It's going to ruin the mood in this whole place. And everybody was like, it's Rahwa's birthday. You have to, like, to me, like everybody was trying to be like, come on, you have to sing something. And she came and she was like, listen, you do what you want to do. If you don't want to sing, when it's happy birthday, you can at least even sing happy birthday to me. Don't let all these people tell you what to do. But don't feel like you can't sing because people are going to judge your voice. Nobody cares about your voice. She was like, by the way, half these people are drunk anyway. She was like, go and like sing whatever you want to sing if you want to sing. If you don't want to sing, she was like, forget all these people. When it's happy birthday, you can sing happy birthday to me with everybody, and then no one can hear you. And it was just such a, I think that to me, I always have that memory of this beautiful reflection of being so truthful, not caring about what people think, being silly and goofy and fun at this. Like, it was just like all of the things I know about Rahwa, at least, were encompassed in this day that was so random. And I think at her memorials, when I was thinking about it, was it just is like, be you and be happy, and like don't let these these things kind of that we try to put on ourselves from other people kind of outline who you are. Like, you are who you are, and you got to be true to that. And I think that to me is like the true legacy of Rahwa. And in that truth, then you will care for other people. You will take care of people. You will fight the fight. You will figure out what needs to be done, and you will help out and pitch in whatever way you can. And that's what I'll remember about Rahwa.
Oh, thank you, Adiam. I mean, there is a lot we can talk about Rahwa and her life. Actually, when I heard about the news, and I didn't know Rahwa, and I wish that I known Rahwa. But I then started listening to some videos on YouTube. And then I read some articles, and where was this beautiful person, like beautiful human being in Seattle, and I haven't met her. But one thing, especially one thing, her activism, her strategic community organizing was like remarkable. Like for me, that was, I was listening to her interview with Seattle Voices, and one thing was striking, like her approach to community organizing as an open book. Like, nobody has a control in a you don't have to control communities or people's or people. You just have to provide a space, and and the dynamic will have its own dynamics. Its own shape. Don't control it. that was like mind blowing for me. Like, and I always wish it to be that that kind of a community organizer, and that was striking. I want us to speak about hitmo. We know that hitmo was a restaurant Rahwa and her sister opened, and we know that it was more than a restaurant. So, in your opinions, what did hitmo symbolize, and how would you describe her activism?
So hitmo, I mean, from some of the conversations or from what Mehret and Adiam shared with y'all, I think you can have a glimpse of it, you know. It started as just a business venture for Asmeret, and Asmeret was Rahwa's sister, and Rahwita. It was in the Central Districts on 20th and Jackson, so that was the actual location, and that's a historic place in Seattle itself. So when they opened it, what a lot of people don't understand is that, you know, with Rahwa, like her background, she started taking care even of her family, and her, like, when she was young, you know, she would start classes and all. So it's already in her as a person, you know. And so, like, when they bought this place, yes, it was like a place where you serve our traditional food, but, you know, the food is, I guess something about food is that, you know, you get the community to enjoy it together, right? And when they opened the door, it was so interesting to see how it evolved. And I think it was only open for 5 years. It wasn't open for more than 5 years. But it became a place where you can go there and get like an Afro-Caribbean band to play. Or like Aria mentioned, the all like women collective. Or, you know, under 18, like underage open mic night. Were all, and these were like the youngsters at the time. But now, again, like I mentioned earlier, are community leaders, you know, or where you have book clubs. Or you have community organizing groups, like even like young Eritreans at the time. I forgot what was the name of it. We had like young just Eritreans who would meet there and strategize. We had like back to school events planning there. So it was a place where a lot of brilliant minds met over coffee, over tea, over injera. And yes, they went there to meet the basic need of eating and drinking. But I think after that first year, it became a place where broken people, those who didn't have homes. There was a young man who was a known singer now in the community who said, you know, when I didn't have a home, Rahwa fed me and encouraged me. And my first time picking up, like, you know, singing was at hitmo. And now he's like, you know, one of the biggest names in Seattle, you know. And like I mentioned before, like whether it's the Macklemores or the Blue Scholars, all these brilliant artists and organizers and poets, you know, started or really got this, their collective and their organizing going at hitmo, you know. So yes, it was a restaurant, but it kind of reminded me of, I don't know if y'all know like the Bob Marley story, for example, where Bob and the Wailers and all the artists at the time like met in a certain house, where from that house, like a lot of brilliant people kind of began to work and organize, you know. It kind of was similar to that. So I think we do it under service by saying that it was just a restaurant. Yes, hitmo was a restaurant, but even like in the memorial and throughout so many articles I was reading about Rahwa, hitmo was a cornerstone that really impacted, because it's been like since 2000, it was like mid 2000s. And so the youth who were there at the time, who were in their, you know, like teens, like 14, 15, they're now in their mid 20s, you know. Let's say I was maybe 16, 17 when it opened, or 18. Yeah, it was around like at the end of my high school, and even had a lot of impact on me. So they're like the young adults right now who are like, if you look at the Black Lives Matter movement in Seattle, or a lot of the hitmo, or a lot of the youth who accessed hitmo, you know, to meet others or to eat or to just connect and get this community vibe, are now those who are leading the fight for social justice, or you name it, you know. And I would like, you know, talk to people. It was so interesting when I started working too. supervisors that I worked with, I didn't know them, but we ended up knowing everyone because of hitmo, you know? And so a lot of the time, like any circle I go to, they like, I'll see, or if I see a shirt that says town all day, I know exactly where that begun, you know, like it's hitmo. Or you'll see random people with a hitmo sign, you know? And so there's a lot of people in Seattle who I didn't even know that they knew Rahwita, and like some way, somehow by conversation, I end up connecting to them, and I'm always known as Rahwa's cousin to a lot of people too, you know? So that's what hitmo was. And I think down the years, I mean, we still haven't really, I don't think that the story of hitmo has, like that book hasn't been done yet, like it's still being written. Because I think a lot of people who I think will impact this community and this city later on in life will continue to talk about hitmo as a place that, you know, they started their passion to organize and serve. So I don't know if that answers the question, because it really is hard to kind of capture what hitmo was, but there's so much footage out there that still hasn't been published. So many things, so many writers, so many, you name it, you know. And the historic place of the Central District, because it was a lot of Black-owned businesses at the time, and hitmo emerged when gentrification started, you know. And so even a lot of people who even fought gentrification in the early 2000s were doing that out of hitmo. So there's so much about this place. It was a magical place, and it's sad that, I mean, in a way, like it wasn't ran like a business, and I think that ended up hurting the business itself, because it was really a place where like Rahwita and them took care of people, you know. And because of that, like they weren't greedy, and they didn't care about just them, they cared about the human beings who walked in. And so even though, yes, it's not around today as a restaurant, but I think the currency or the, they didn't get money in a sense, but like what they invested in is impacting the community way past hitmo, if that makes sense. So that's what hitmo was.
I shared mostly. I think what I think when you're talking to someone, what I was thinking about is like, you know, like a group home, like a homeless shelter. It's a sanctuary. I mean, it was literally like people. I remember there was a girl at the memorial who was sharing, you know, not having a home and going to hitmo, and they were, you know, even though she couldn't sleep there necessarily, they were like, we're gonna figure it out. It was like it was a social service agency without being one, right? Like, we are gonna figure this out. We're gonna figure out what you need, and you know, that person is thriving now because of the support of people in a place where she didn't feel like she could go to anywhere. She just happened to kind of be there with some people. I think it was open mic night, and then met some people, you know, and then they found out she was homeless. She had nowhere to stay, and it was like, we will figure that out. And so I think, you know, I think about a sanctuary. I mean, it was just literally a sanctuary for people. And and I mean, like I said, for a few months, even for me, it was definitely a sanctuary of a place where you felt really included, but also you knew there was like power happening. Like when I would come in, like I didn't start work till 2 back in the day, and so I would go there for like lunchtime, and they didn't really open. They would be there like setting up, you know, they're not open till the nighttime, but Jonathan would open the place for me, give me shahi. Like Asmada wouldn't even be there to cook yet, so there was no food, but I would just drink shahi and like work on bring my laptop. I, you know, asked if I could steal Wi-Fi the first day, and then ever since then they were like, she'll just be here all the time, and I was there all the time. And I would just see people, and I, like someone said, I would see people meeting and community organizing and people talking about what to do. And, you know, again, somebody would come in and have a problem or a question, and it was like someone like walked them in, like, oh, you just need to go to hitmo, they'll figure it out for you. And then they just brought them into this place, like a community center, right? And said, okay, like someone's gonna figure out what you need. And it was just also beautiful to, like, you know, someone was mentioning is then you could eat in Jeddah. Like Asma can cook. I was like, but this is great. I was so excited because coming from Arizona, we didn't really have we had no Eritrean restaurants, by the way. And so for me to see Eritreans on top of that was already a big deal, but to have restaurants to go to, and then to have a young person that was like my age running that business and cooking, I mean, first made me feel bad, like I cannot make injera to save my life. So I am very proud of these two. But they were just in the back making food for people. And it was like, you know, they would notice this person come in and didn't have money, and they would feed them. And even if it wasn't Rahwa and Asmat, all of their friends who were always there, or their business partners who worked with them, they would see that need. And it was like everybody was on the same mission. We are going to help the community no matter what that means. And so whether that's one person, whether we're rallying, whether we're going to get people organized to vote, whether we're going to raise money for something, I mean, they all had the same vision of our job is to take care of this community. whatever that means, and we'll figure it out by any means necessary. So I really feel like people came there because they could be themselves, because they could relax, because they could get their needs met, because they could like be free, and then they could enjoy themselves. I mean, there were nights I was literally like, man, I wish I could sing, because these people are like, people were singing and rapping and drums and music, and I mean, we were West African dancing one time, and I was just like, this is amazing. Like, where can you go usually to find all of that in one place, right? You'd have to go to like a West African community center to get theirs, an East African to get art. I mean, but it was like a Filipino music. You would have like Southeast Asian. I mean, it was just like such a beautiful mix of all of these people together, for whatever reason they were coming together. And I think people really felt like, this is the only place I can be me and get everything I need and get my needs met, and like, and be with people and be happy. And so it was a very beautiful thing to see, even not knowing any of those people or things at first, just kind of like sitting there, and you could like watch it all happening around you. And it was really cool. And in the CD, amazing, because like someone said, it was, I moved in, I lived right around the corner. I would walk all the way past there, go to the like Airtran Starbucks on 23rd and Jackson. I was past that and go to my gym and then come back. And I always made a point to go past Hitmo to see if it was open. Like I could go any route. It was easy. I always pass Hitmo after I learned that Hitmo was there. And I would like do my run past Hitmo and then past the Starbucks and go to the gym and then the same thing back. And so it was nice because it just felt comfortable. It felt normal. It felt like really easy to just be there and be yourself. So it made sense to me then to be like, oh, I'm gonna run past this place on my run. So it was just really cool spot.
Thank you, Adiam. From what you described and from the little information that I got from some articles, some videos, I felt like Hitmo was like for me, Hitmo would symbolize like a power, like it was an anchor, like a power anchor for communities. What incredible, like how did one person have this kind of, I mean, this much energy and this much creativity to, it's unbelievable.
I'd like to share something, Nikala, real quick, as as I hear y'all share this, it like, maybe I'm just generally in like this weird emotional place right now. My heart just kind of aches a little bit. It's like this need for a place like that, not just for me, but also my younger cousins who are now teenagers and getting older and looking for community, right? Looking for community to connect with, a place to go to, a place to learn something from, a place to see diversity, a place to see themselves reflected, space to see creativity, like all the things that y'all described. I'm just like, we need it so badly. And the spaces that are currently called community centers, I'm going to be controversial here right now, don't feel much of a community centers to me. And just wanted to say that. I put on record.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I can't agree more. I think it's, you said it. I mean, all right. I think, I know that we can say a lot of things about Rahwa. I think we can go on and on. So for us and for people who would be listening to this video, what do we learn from her life? I mean, I know that you've you've touched most of this, but what do we learn from her life? And what do you think is the best way to honor or to remember Rahwa?
Well, I shared earlier what I think she meant. So I think part of that fits in there is being like authentically true, being yourself. I think also what I think about Rahwa is like not being confined to a box. Like I think about like someone was saying, like they saw a business venture and then they were like, oh, we see a need and we're filling it. Like, let's do that. And how do we do that? Right. And I think other people would have felt really confined, or like you were saying, Jonas, like we already have 2 community centers, or we already, like there are social service agencies in Seattle, just tell that person to go there, right? And feeling like, how do you impact community in all the different ways, and not feeling really confined to it has to look one way, right? It has to be a certain person that has to do it. And like, how are you supposed to look? How are you supposed to dress? What does that mean? Is is what's right and wrong, and what, you know, how do we take care of people. And so I think about kind of her legacy and being like, how can we be true to ourselves, be vulnerable and be honest and be open and really connect with human beings to help human beings, like in order to help the earth. You know, like we all have to connect with each other. I think if we're not connecting with each other, if we're not being our true honest selves, then we're being really shallow, and it's really hard to connect, because then I can't see your pain and I can't do anything about it, right? And I think we have lots of reasons why we might not show that, but to be able to actually help is that we have to be really vulnerable, and then be authentic, and then be able to see that in other people and not judge that, but actually try to help that and do something about that. And I think that's, you know, that's literally what Rahwa was trying to do, is like, how do I figure out what needs to happen, right? And it was whether it was one individual person or a collective thing that was going wrong in the system or the structure, she found a way. At one point I was like, I feel like Rahwa has like 6 jobs. I don't know where she works everywhere, because she's like running Washington Hall, but she's on Pramila's like, you know, campaign. And then she's like doing One America. She's getting us to vote. I mean, there were so many times I'm like, where do you actually work, right? But she didn't feel confined by that. She was like, there's a problem, there's a need, our community's not being met, people are hurting, and there's got to be a way that I can do something about that. And if she can't do it individually herself, it's like getting us all to vote, so that she knew that we could make an impact that way, right? And so, but I think a lot of that is like getting people to be honest and true about what they're suffering in or what they need, right? And vice versa. And so that we can all actually help each other. So to me, I feel like it ties into like, not just like how can we honor her legacy, but how can we continue that movement. And I think she's instilled fire in people in different ways, and they've sparked in different arenas and parts of their lives, and maybe they've gotten quiet and maybe they've gotten louder, different things happen. But I think there's always like this spark that you then are like, oh, I feel the fire to do something, right? And then I think in knowing her, and unfortunately in her passing now, I think people are thinking about like, what does that mean? Like, how do we actually be true to Rahwa's honor and legacy and what she's done for me, right? Even though that's a very small portion compared to all these other people she knew really closely, she impacted me more than she ever knew, and it was really massive. And so how can I give that back to this community or other communities? And I think figuring out how to be authentic and true, and figuring out how to get people to tell me what they need, and then figuring out how we can do something about that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Adiam. I definitely agree with you. And I think just to add up to that, Rahwa's beginnings are extremely humble, you know, like they came with nothing really to the United States. Baba Hawkeye was a revolutionary. They escaped, you know, the war, came here as refugees, and you know, like she started from a place where many of us, especially our brothers and sisters who are arriving right now to the States, are still trying to figure out how to make a better life for themselves, you know? So many, like they started, actually, things there are probably more services now because a lot of us are here, and then we're able to kind of support each other. But like when they started and they came to the States, they had to kind of figure it out. They're trailblazers in their own respect. And so that's who Rahwa was. So she started from that, learned the language and excelled, and you know, she could have done the selfish thing because she wanted to be, you know, a doctor really, but she left after she graduated in early 2000. She came back because of my cousin Daniel, may God rest his soul, and she came back to be with him, you know. And then after the deep conversation she had with Danu, and after she seen him pass away, it kind of changed her, and she decided to give back. So there are many ways we can celebrate Rahwa's legacy, but I think if there's one word, it is to serve. You know, I think that's one thing that I took and by her example, because I've dedicated my life, I think, to service. You know, and Rahwa have showed me how to do it. You know, without saying, "Oh, this is how it is done," like she did it. And so she didn't take herself too serious. And she was like the life of the party, and she was the life of the holidays. She would bake, and like that's who she was, yeah. And she would be goofy, and like she wasn't too proud to be a child with children. But when she was in the room in meetings, or like she commanded it. And so she there was like that switch. So she was these different people. You can't really highlight, you know, who she was, and like I think somebody said like you couldn't box her, you know, her style was different. Like she didn't have to I think a lot of young women, especially Black or African young women, can really look at her. I think she was like Angela Davis or Sada Shakur of this generation, of their reach, and she really was. She didn't dress like everybody else. Rahwa had her own style. Y'all know, you knew Rahwa's style, you know? She loved her own, like, she wasn't afraid to let you know that she loved Harry Potter, Prince. She would love Prince. So she wasn't afraid to tell you, this is what I like and this is what I'm about, you know? And so she was fearless in that way. So it is okay for you to be different. You don't have to act like anybody else, and you don't have to wear or follow, you know, a certain trend. Be you, be authentic, be real. And at the same time, you know, serve. You know, it wasn't about what she was, but it was about what she could do for others. Even in the middle of the pandemic, you know, she went trying to cook and feed the homeless. That's who she was, right? And so I think our responsibility, it is to make this world a better place than we inherited for the next generation. And that's what, you know, Rahwa did. At the same time, you know, she was brave enough to talk about her addictions and her battle, and she didn't shy away from that. And so that is something we also need to honor and take away from it. Yes, she fell, to me, like, she's a warrior. She fell in that battle line. It was a battle, and it was an internal battle. And I think the pandemic made it even harder because everybody was isolated, you know, especially when you have your mental health issues and all of that. And so she wasn't even afraid to talk about that. So I think that's how we can honor her legacy. It is for us to continue the fight. I mean, the world today, you see it, you know, the climate, as shook as she was, you know, in the Black Lives Matter movement marches, like, she was out there, you know, she served. And so today in Seattle, if you're watching this and you're in Seattle, I can tell you firsthand, there's a lot of Eritreans, East Africans who are homeless right there, downtown Seattle, you know, serve them. It's getting cold out. Go and cook and serve. That's what Rahwa was about. That's how you honor her legacy, you know? And educate yourself and read and continue to advocate, and continue to fight. And also, you know, love your families and invest in the youth. Rahwa loved to invest in the youth, whether it was her nephews and nieces, or whether it's us, or whether it is like the greater community. Really, that's who Rahwa was. And she didn't have a lot of resources, but she made it happen. And she went from, you know, from humble beginnings to the highest offices at the mayor's office. But like, when she would leave it, like, she didn't say, oh, look at me, I'm working, I'm in that like small circle of the mayor at the time. Like, that's who, it was a job, but it was really more about the service of people. She didn't even want that job. He actually reached out to her because she was campaigning against him at the time. And he reached out to her. And even when she got in there, it was really more to open doors for us, you know? So yeah, that's who she was. And I think we will do our best to continue honoring her legacy. And I want to thank you, you know, like, on behalf of the family, for doing this. Because I think Rahwita and people like Rahwita, and even my sister Adiam here, she's with us, and we need to give her flowers because she is also a trailblazer, and she did so much in the community. And tonight too, and we have a lot of brilliant, you know, women in our community who we do not honor and respect while they're here. And so, like, Adiam and Mehret, who are, I mean, it's an honor to be in this platform with you because y'all do so much. And Rahwa was definitely one of those women. And so it's important for us to also give these ladies and these powerful women, you know, their flowers while they're still here with us and while they're still serving and contributing. Because I know Adiam and I know Mehret and I know Sanait have done that in the community and will continue to do so too. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Simone. I can add one thing too. What I want to say is about someone's family and Rahwa's family. I mean, Mehret's family. I also think there are these families in Seattle that I think, you know, Rahwa's, you know, her parents she gets it from her parents. I mean, like, her dad is very humble, very helping person as well. And her mom does it in her own kind of behind the scenes secret kind of ways. And then the whole family, like, I mean, I feel like every time I've met somebody in their family, I'm just like, how are all of you like this? Like, everybody is like this caring person who wants to fix the world and like do good and serve and care and has just such a big heart. And whatever it is in that family, it is really, it's gone through all of them, right? So like the first time I met someone, it was the same thing. It was like such a good conversation. I was like, wow, I've never met this guy before. It was like, we're just flowing, talking, it's a great time. Temeskin took me under his wing, introduced me to a bunch of people. But I think the family, there's a real true servant's heart in the Habte Rahwa family and like an extension, right? So, and everyone feels that sense of we're all here to take care of each other, right? As a community, not just family. And I just want to give like respect and praise and honor and love to like Simone and like all of the families, because I don't think that if you think about Seattle, there are a couple key families, and that family is all it. And no matter what you need, no matter what you're missing, it's not just Rahwa, like they're all like that, but Rahwa was a fire starter in her own way in lots of ways. But that family, the whole family is just very loving and giving in a way that I think really birthed in her, like, we care about everybody, no matter what. And she continued that legacy times like way more than they could have probably ever imagined. I mean, 10,000-fold, million-fold. But I do really want to say that family, that whole family they're all like that in a sense of just heart giving. And I think that really is what matters.
How do you think Seattle should honor Rahwa?
That's a big question. I don't even know if there's a way. I think about like streets being named after her, buildings being named after her. I mean, I think there needs to be like a hitmo, like big community resource center space in the middle of the Central District, again, just like in honor of her. There's so many things I feel like should happen in that kind of a realm of like a physical presence, right? Something you can see all the time that honors her. But I really think it's the people of Seattle coming together to make change the way, like someone said, like she wanted to serve everybody. And I think wanting everybody to serve everybody else. And so how do we create space and systems and avenues and structures in Seattle so that we can all do that? And I think even just individually all do that regardless of the system and structure. But yeah, I mean, I think there'd have to be like 15 HIDMOs throughout the whole state of Washington that really could then be support for students, right? And I mean, young people and old people and homeless people, I mean, everybody, and mental health and addiction. So I don't know if there's like one real way I can think of, minus like, we just got to change it all and make it all better.
Yeah, it definitely is a interesting question. I would say, just knowing her battle, one way that Seattle, or at least the city, because she worked with the city, is, and she actually worked with homeless women, I think at the YWCA for a long time. And so it is to, one, have more funding. I know we talk about defunding SPD and all, and so a lot of the money that they're trying to redistribute, to really invest in single moms and Black and brown moms and women who are facing addiction and trauma in general, mental health. And so to invest some in that way, so that we're, especially through this pandemic, and also then like people who are in the same battle as our sister Rahwa will get more support. That's one way. The other is, I think she always championed education, especially for, young blood girls. So to have more scholarships in her name, and for us to continue, I think opening doors for our people and for the East African community, because a lot of our youth right now are going through it. When you look at it, whether it's being caught up in the system or, need more guidance and mentorship. And so for us to also do that, because that's what she did with HIDMO. And so whether that means for us to open something or for us just to invest and to participate and to really reach out to our youth in our own capacity, whether it's to coach a team or to start a group or a book club or whatever, or a writing circle. That's what Rahwa did. Brother Gabriel Tedros went in her memory, or when we did a memorial at HIDMO, said HIDMO was a community center, but it was so dope and it was so engaging and impacting because we didn't receive funding from the government or from contracts that bind us to certain outcomes, right? And so she didn't need that in order for her to impact people. And I think that's what she showed us. She really showed us you don't need a grant for you to make a huge impact. And so in your own way, if you really want to serve, you'll find a way. And it could be as simple as going buying socks and going downtown and giving it to somebody who is battling the cold out, or cooking something and just going and giving it to 5-6 people. That's an impact, And so I think that's how we can honor Rahwa in Seattle, or that's how Seattle can honor Rahwa, is to do. She didn't say, like I said, she never said, this is what I'm doing and you should do what I'm doing. She just did it. And her action is what taught us to contribute and to serve. And so to follow her lead in her actions. yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Well, thank you. Jonas, do you have any thoughts of this?
Man, I want to say one of the community centers should be named after her. I think it should be called Rahwa Community Center. Maybe it's Eritrean Rahwa Community Center. I think because that her legacy, what she stood for, what hitmo stood for, what happened at the hitmo, all will come with that, right? Like if this space is supposed to symbolize that, it will be that place. And we need that terribly, in my opinion. And maybe that's the result of after COVID. Maybe that's what people are going to rally for, because there's a strong need for connection and a sense of community that will come even stronger, I think, after we come out of this. But yeah, thank you. I feel like I got so much energy out of this. I don't know that I hate this.
Jazz history on jazz.
You know, like you have so much energy, but I gotta get
traction. Seattle's only historically black neighborhood, with Jenny's house sat in an empty lot. For hella years while community fight to make a landmark on a relevant block instead of pushed out to rent like the people that live there. Gentrification's never been so clear. See, police intimidating, businesses fear. You could do what you want, but no hip-hop around here. A cop told her on the day that she opened, dubbed the Mecca by the day that we closed it. The only venue that was on that street, with live music several nights of the week. The first shows for many an MC. They fill the void that is still empty. The hill, when our building's gone, we gon' keep building. Even when our building's gone, we gon' keep building. Even when our building's gone, we gon' keep building on a legacy that is strong. And there's so much to hitmo signify. Starting by respect what you occupy. Love and be able to improvise. Provide what your people may actually need. You did a better job than any 5013C. With something simple as music and food. Good hearts in a couple of rooms. Real conversations, the world brand new is what it felt like on a good night. Independence, no permission, make it happen. You gotta dream, well, here's a space, it is that simple. The world is a hitmo, I'm starting to know. The world is a hitmo, I'm starting to know. The world is a